What's his name is in more trouble than he is. Colin is in more trouble than
Good
Trump.
afternoon, and welcome to the Voice of Wisdom. With over 60 years of experience as an investment banker, entrepreneur, investment analyst, economist, and venture capitalist, Morty Davis is Wall Street and capitalism personified. The over 400 companies for which he has raised more than $3 billion over the years have created a countless number of jobs and exciting new products. Through the Voice of Wisdom, Mr. Davis explores, analyzes, and debates the most topical political and economic issues facing our world today. Joining Mr. Davis today for a discussion on the midterm elections is Rabbi David Seidemann. To join the conversation, please call 332-263-3300. That's 332-263-3300. And now, Mr. Davis and Rabbi Seidemann.
Welcome back to my precious, cherished guests. I look forward to speaking with you every Wednesday at 6:30, and I learn more from you than I think you learn from me, but in the interaction, I find it very constructive, very exciting, and especially when I can induce somebody as brilliant and as incisive as Rabbi Seidemann. He knows about everything from Torah to secular to chemistry and philosophy and psychology and physics. He's a genius, so it's great to have him join me today again, and we should have a very exciting and interesting dialogue because we just completed one of the most interesting, intriguing, exciting elections in the history of the United States and maybe in the entire world. So let me start off by asking or suggesting who I think were the big winners and losers in yesterday's election. Although it's not over, it'll be weeks before we know who all the winners are, and we don't even know yet who has a majority of the Senate or the House of Representatives. But in my view, the big winner for the Republicans, and everybody I think shares that view pretty much, was DeSantis, the governor of California, who won by literally a landslide against a former governor, Chris. So that was really quite an achievement. And amongst the Democrats, Biden is considered a winner because it's the most unusual outcome, given that over the last maybe three-quarters of a century or more, the first election after the 2 years after the president is elected, a new president is elected, in that period, the 2 years following his election, overwhelmingly the party out of power has won an enormous amount of congressional seats, House of Representatives and senators. I think in '94 with Clinton, Newt Gingrich, I think they won about as many as, don't hold me to it, but I thought as many as 64 or more congressional political choices were elected. In other words, Republicans picked up 64 seats. And there's only two instances in the last 75 years probably where that didn't happen. Once was during President Clinton's first 2 years. He won. He was rather popular, and he won a majority of the Democrats won a majority of the Congress, increased their position, and the second was George Bush, the son, George Bush Jr., President Bush, right after 9/11. He was he was elected in 2000, and shortly thereafter, we had that terrible terrorist attack against the World Trade Center, and as often happens, the whole country mobilized around the president, and patriotism and loyalty to the president became very powerful, and the Republican Party picked up a significant number of new seats. And yesterday, it was largely, overwhelmingly believed that there would be a red wave. In other words, red being the Republican Party would pick up a large number of seats, particularly since Biden's numbers reflect that he's not loved or really sufficiently appreciated to be kind, that he's not too popular. The feeling was that the Democrats would take a real beating. And as a matter of fact, the reverse happened. So Biden, to some extent, and the Democrats in total were big winners. I think there may be one or two other that I considered winners, but I can't think of them right now. So I want to ask Rabbi Seidemann to step in and add his wisdom.
Well, I would agree with you that Ron DeSantis is the big winner. A lot of political pundits on the right have now dubbed Ron DeSantis as the leader of the Republican Party. I think that, and I think you disagree with me, but I think another big winner, I agree with you on this, another big winner is the Democrats, because they now are emboldened. They were getting ready for their big red wave, which didn't happen, and this strengthens them. But I think the big loser was Donald Trump. And I'll cite one statistic. Before yesterday's election, Ron DeSantis, the pecking order of who had the better chance to become the next president of the United States, Donald Trump was in the 30 percentile. DeSantis was hovering at around 15%, and Biden was at 11%. After yesterday's election, DeSantis is now at 26.8%. Trump went all the way down to 18.4%. He lost 10%, and Biden is at 11.8%. Look, it's true that a lot of hand-picked politicians that Trump endorsed won, but 19 of them lost. And when you look at the 19 of them that lost, they were not stars. I think what we learned yesterday is that it's not enough to point out the deficiencies of the opposition. You can't simply say Joe Biden's a loser, he screwed up Afghanistan, inflation, the border. Americans need to see, in addition to that, they need to see that your candidate is a rock star. I'll give you an example. I'm stunned at the Georgia Senate race. It's going to a runoff. We know now, before that runoff, and there's two other Senate races that are undecided, Nevada and Arizona. Right now, those
won't have won't have a new election.
They will not know. But the Nevada, right now it's 49-48 Republicans. Nevada is probably going to go Republican. The Republican candidate is ahead by 49-47, with, I believe, 98% of the vote counted. Mm-hmm. So Nevada's going to go Republican, and that's going to bring the Republicans up to 50. Arizona, I don't understand why it hasn't been called yet. It's 51-46 ahead of the Democrat. That's a sizable lead.
Kelly.
Right, that's a sizable lead. So Democrats are going to carry Arizona. So that makes it 50-49 Republicans. Georgia, I'm surprised that Herschel Walker is even in the mix. Now, we know in Georgia you need to get at least 50% or there's a runoff. Warnock is a little bit ahead. I'm surprised because Herschel Walker, as great as a football star as he is, he's not a star politician. He doesn't come across well on the stump, and I'm surprised that it was even that close. Now, there was an independent who was running who took away 2% of the vote in Georgia.
Yeah.
So now the question is, who gets that 2%? If Warnock gets it, then it's 50-50, and once again, Kamala Harris breaks the tie. If Herschel Walker gets it, then it's 51-49. My feeling is that Warnock takes it. I think that when you're only focusing on two, Warnock as the incumbent and a more seasoned politician makes a better
I would agree
better
with you on
candidate.
that score, except I thought he was going to win big even before yesterday.
Who?
That
Warnock, yes, yeah.
Because he's got a better
Resume.
preparation for this job.
Right.
But when you think about it in the South, I think a great superstar football player is considered much more impressive, worthwhile.
Not against an incumbent. I would agree
No,
with you.
against any politician, but even greater than the president, because the South,
Right.
they really live and die for football teams.
I'll tell you what is an anomaly. You would think if Warnock did that well, you would think that Stacey Abrams would have done that well as well in the gubernatorial. She got trounced.
Yeah.
Stacey Abrams got trounced. And I saw a report today that Beto in Texas,
He got trounced.
oh my God, he spent like $400 billion already, more than the gross national domestic product of 27 different countries.
So did what's her name, who ran against the governor, the sitting governor in Georgia? She spent a fortune.
Yeah, yeah.
She had national backing by the
Yeah, Abrams, yeah. So I was
Go ahead.
I was heartened to see that, but I do think that Trump is a little bit of a drag on the Republican Party at this point. If DeSantis runs in 2024 and Trump does not, DeSantis is the next president because the Democrats have nobody.
Right.
If Trump runs, the Democrats don't need a somebody. They just need enough anti-Trumpers. And I know you and I disagree on this. I know you think if Trump gets the nomination and he runs, he wins hands down because the Democrats have nobody.
I don't think that there's any question about that Trump would get the nomination. I don't think there's a chance that DeSantis, because if you remember, going back to 2016, Trump started against 18 other
Politicians.
well qualified,
Right.
including Jeb Bush, who had a big treasurer
Right.
prepared. His family reputation was great. He was a great governor of Florida. He was a no-brainer, and so many of them, Ted Cruz and
Right.
and I don't remember all the people that ran, but and he killed them.
Yeah.
And so if he goes against DeSantis, by the time DeSantis is ready to run, he'll be running out of the Florida and out of the country because that's Trump's strength, and I don't think he's ever. And then I don't.
So then, why didn't he win against Biden? If Trump was that powerful, why did he lose against Biden?
I think what happened was strictly. I agree with you that people, or I don't know if you said that, but I think people vote more against somebody.
So why won't they do that this time?
No, than for somebody.
Right.
I think I mentioned to you, they interviewed one woman, was a brilliant answer. They asked her who she's voting for during this poll, and she said, I'm not voting. I'm not voting for either one of them.
I'm voting against.
No, I'm not voting. So he said, what do you mean? How come? She says, because it only encourages them.
You know what I thought was a good pickup? I thought J.D. Vance was a great pickup in Ohio. Great pickup in Ohio, and that solidifies Ohio as a Republican.
Why do you think he was so great? Does he have a great reputation?
No, but he's a great Republican. He's a great spokesman. He's filled with energy. I think Bud was a great pickup in North Carolina.
You're saying you're a very loyal Republican, and for you,
No, I think it was a great pickup. I thought Bud in North Carolina, that was a surprise. I think the polls had him trailing. I think that was great. I tell you what, I am surprised. A little bit surprised that Fetterman would beat Oz in Pennsylvania. I think Oz had a lot of star power. He had a lot of name recognition.
He wasn't from Pennsylvania.
What hurt him...
And also he's got a bad reputation in business because he sold a lot of products that had little validity, but great promoter. He's a great salesman.
He is.
Television salesman. Celebrities these days win the name recognition.
Well, that's what I thought. I thought if Herschel Walker did that well, just being a football player who, by the way, articulated many contradictory positions, and nevertheless, he's a half a percentage point behind Warnock. This goes back to what you said before, that in Georgia, they just love football players. You could have put up, a statue of Newt Rockne, and they would have voted for the dead Newt Rockne. Right. But I thought that Oz...
And that might be a better result than
any
of the live ones.
Could be. No, but I watched Herschel Walker, and I like him, but I just saw that his ability to articulate on the stump was not as smooth as Warnock. It just wasn't as smooth. And Futterman, I'm surprised because, and God bless him, but his health issues, I'm really surprised that Oz didn't do better.
When he had a stroke, I thought there was a great chance that he would get beat. He was way ahead all along.
The other interesting thing is that not only did, I think Rubio and DeSantis did something in Florida that was really amazing. They won Miami-Dade County by an astronomical numbers. Now that is as Democrat as you can get. And somebody said it's because of all the Republican Jews that left New York that moved down to Florida. And if they would have stayed in New York, Zeldin would have won.
That's probably true. But, it goes back to the election of 2000 when Gore really won, in my view. And even Patrick Buchanan said he never knew that so many... because he was very disliked by Jewish voters because he was, I don't know if you remember, but he stood up for some Nazi that the United States was trying to deport. And Buchanan said we should let him stay here.
Right.
And he was definitely not a strong pro-Israel guy. He was not pro-Jewish. And he said, Pat Buchanan made this joke.
Right.
He said, I never knew I was so popular amongst all Jewish ladies because the Democratic woman who designed the ballot arranged the ballot such that people thought they were voting for Gore and Lieberman.
Right.
And inadvertently, it looked like they were voting for Pat Buchanan.
Right. Now, today, moving to the House, today, the Democrats picked up 6 seats. 6 seats that they didn't have yesterday.
Yeah, how many
they're inching closer.
But how many did the Republicans?
One from yesterday. In other words, when we went to sleep last night, it was 206 Republican, 177 Democrat. Now, today, as we sit here today at 6:50, it's 207 Republican, 183 Democrat. So there's 45 seats left, and the Republicans need to pick up 11 out of those 45. And they're predicted to pick up 13 or 14 out of those 45. So it does look like that the Republicans will regain control of the House. And then you have the battle that's going to ensue as to who the Speaker is. I know McCarthy wants to be the Speaker of the House.
Maybe it'll be Trump.
Yeah.
No, really.
Yeah, I know. You don't have to be a member of Congress to be the Speaker of the House. That's correct. A lot of people don't know that.
Right.
That is correct. You do not need to be... the interesting thing is, if Trump was off the scene, what would happen in 2024?
You know, in a way, what's his name? Herschel...
Walker.
Walker is a duplicate of Trump in terms of where they started off and how they moved ahead. Because Trump, I don't know if you remember, he appeared on a show called Access Hollywood,
Yes.
and he said I could walk up to any woman and
Yes.
reach under her dress and
Yes,
they
yes,
like
yes,
it, you know.
yes, yes, yes.
And the head of the Republican Party at that time came up to him and said, Donald, you have to resign because there's no way you can
Right.
continue your
Get away
pursuit
with
of the
that,
And so one of the guys that is the most obnoxious, one of the most obnoxious guys I ever dealt with in my career, Steve Bannon, told Trump, don't listen to the leaders of the party. Don't listen. They don't know what they're talking about. In 3 days, the world will forget about it.
But let me ask you this,
No,
Marty.
but what's his name? Started out the same way. Lied. He said he never had anything to do with the woman. I don't even know the woman.
I get it.
And then the check there was so much bad evidence brought up against him. You thought that he had no chance, and then he overcame.
But let
it.
me ask you this, Morty. What does it say about Americans when gas prices are at record heights, inflation is out of control, the border's out of control, crime is out of control, yet they vote to continue with the administration, with the present administration? What does that say about the electorate? Are they confused? Are they uninformed? Are they anti-Trump? Are they just not involved? Have they given up?
No, I think they're informed. Unlike you, I used to be a Republican, strong Republican. I'm, what is it called? Not epileptic, but...
You converted.
No, what is it called? What's the word?
An apologetic?
No. It's eclectic.
Eclectic.
Not
right.
epileptic, but eclectic.
Right.
In that I supported, over the last 40 years, actively supported, gave a lot of money at different election times, to Republicans, to Democrats. I was a strong supporter of Bill Clinton, and I was best friends with and a strong supporter of George Bush, the father.
Right.
I was a big...
I'm not friends with any of these people. I'm friends with you. That's it.
That's your,
You're the most famous person I know.
That's your misfortune.
I know. What does that get me? I have a picture of me and Morty Davis in my house.
I
That's
was
it.
buddies with what's his name, who was Speaker of the House in '94.
Newt Gingrich?
Newt Gingrich. I
Yeah.
was buddies with
Well, he
Newt
was great.
Gingrich.
Yeah.
And so, I've been both sides. And I
'Cause
like
you're
to,
issue-oriented.
I like to think that. So let me tell you about this inflation and the border and a lot of things that are terrible right now, which would have indicated that Biden should have been destroyed. The Democrats should
Right.
have been. But of all the countries, the advanced countries in the world, the United States has the lowest inflation and has the strongest economy. So, and not only that, but in my judgment, Biden introduced good policies. And I don't know that the what do you call it, the Republicans have any policies other than lower taxes for the rich, eliminate all regulations, even though they protect the environment, they protect people's lives, they defend against monopolistic practices. So if you tell me what the Republican agenda is, maybe I could agree with you. But they have no agenda. They have an agenda of even now, if they get elected, what's their agenda? To put what's his name in jail. That's the highest priority.
Hunter Biden.
Hunter Biden.
No, I think their agenda
Hopefully,
is...
wait. Hopefully, that's the best part of it. But to put Joe Biden in jail for illegally stealing the election, and
I disagree. Drill, baby, drill.
What do you-
That's their agenda. Open up the
and
drilling in America.
I disagree with that totally. I want to do less drilling and more
Importing?
urgent replacement of renewable energy.
You need oil to run that machinery that's going to convert renewable energy.
I'll tell you my experience. Ever since I'm a kid, I follow this.
Okay, Morty, this goes back to the 1600s.
Yeah,
when
the
you were a kid.
1600s.
Yeah.
Before oil was even.
Right.
They only used oil
Right.
to light candles.
And a horse.
Right.
Yeah.
For Hanukkah, they used oil.
Right, they lit horses on fire. Go ahead.
No, so every year I looked it up, and every year the oil company said, we only have 12 years supply of oil for the world.
Baloney.
For 12 years. They've produced billions of barrels of oil. They have more oil now than they ever had in the world. It's the most super abundant commodity, and if they didn't manipulate the price and let the oil companies make, they'd never made as much money as they made last year.
Right. The announcements were last week. That's correct.
No, particularly since right before they started controlling the supply, which is the most illegal thing. In America, they'd all be in jail. OPEC. They paid you to take a barrel of oil, and then within a year they moved it from minus, where they pay you to take the oil because they had no more storage facilities, it went to 130. So that's the absence of leadership by both parties.
So I want to touch on that, the absence of leadership, because this goes back to something I said before. Joe Biden could be the biggest failure in the world, but when it comes to electing replacement politicians, you can't just run against the other guy's weakness. You have to have your own superstars. Ron DeSantis is a superstar, but I think he's the only superstar the Republicans have. I don't think they did a good job at developing other tremendous Republican candidates, present company included. Now, I don't think they did a great job in developing other Ron DeSantises, and that's the problem. It's not just enough to say this guy's no good, this guy's no good. You need a powerhouse, and I can't believe in a country of 300 million people that there's only one.
The Republicans have more superstars,
but they didn't bring them to the forefront.
The woman who was appointed by Trump as the head of the UN, representing the UN,
Nikki Haley.
Nikki Haley is a tremendous personality and not off the derech.
No, I'm talking about in yesterday's elections. That's what I'm talking about.
Yesterday's elections?
I'm talking about in yesterday's elections. There were really not the higher echelon superstars of the Republican Party. I think they took it for granted. I think they said that we could dummy down some of our candidates because Biden is so bad. And that's a miscalculation.
Well, no, but the Republicans, even if whether you like them or not, have celebrity that people know about. A lot of people think they're great. Rubio is one of them. Ted Cruz is another one of them. The governor of Texas is another one of them.
Right.
So they have...
yeah, but Cruz wasn't running yesterday. He wasn't on the ballot. Was Abbott on the ballot yesterday? I don't think so. Abbott was on the ballot yesterday?
Yeah.
Abbott was on... Okay, but Cruz wasn't on the ballot yesterday.
The governor of Georgia is Republican, isn't he?
Kemp, who beat Abrams, yeah. Right.
They have more impressive people that could
but
run.
I was referring more to the House of Representatives. I don't think that there were superstar Republicans running in the House of Representatives. So look, this gives Joe Biden the mandate to move more to the left. And the only upside of that is that 2 years from now, some of these on-the-fence independents might be so upset to the extent that Biden moves to the left that they might come over to the right. And that could spell victory for the Republicans, whether it's Trump or somebody else. But this basically gives Biden 2 more years to screw up America, in my point of view.
Well, I told you that. I think he's introduced things that were beneficial in this environment to America, and I haven't seen the Republicans do any of that. You know, more tax cuts, and I'm one of the rich. I don't believe, that's a good use of funds. To give more money to people who have plenty to begin with is not, that, it's a trickle-down theory
Right.
of economics.
Reagan's,
That if you
yeah.
give it to the rich, they create jobs. And that's nonsense because
They
it
keep
doesn't-
profits.
It does, no, if the masses don't have a demand for product, there's no wealth created. So, it's because the opposite. It goes from the bottom up. The recessions and depressions are always created by a lack of demand, and the government is the last resource, the last residual creator of demand. Because when nobody's spending money and they're depressed, the government steps in and spends tons of money and gives subsidies and whatever.
Let me ask you this, Morty. How do you feel about all this early voting and the fact that here it is 24 hours after an election and we still don't know who's in charge of the Senate, we still don't know who's in charge of the House because there's races where there's still tabulations going on. You would think in a country, you put in as advanced as America, you put in your ballot, it's tabulated by a computer. I think this is ridiculous, and I think it gives people an excuse to say that the elections are not secure.
I'll give you a frame of reference. There's an excellent article in today's Times that summarizes it, but it's been happening over years. For the longest time, America was looked up to, the United States, as the ideal democracy. Everybody got to vote, everybody got... it was the role model of democracy, and they all wanted to imitate to the extent that they could. America. Now there's about 100 countries that have automatic voter registration and even compulsory registration. The United States is moving in the other direction,
right?
And they say they've lost respect for our democracy. Canada has no respect anymore. Canada doesn't allow endless contributions to politicians. PAC and support. They've changed it, and not only that, the United States is one of the only countries, democracies, where you could win, as Trump did in 2016, by getting a minority of the vote,
right,
or being exceeded by the vote of the other party. It's devolved into the worst thing, and it's partially, as they talk about it, it's partially the problem of our great respect for our perfect Constitution. So we could never adapt.
You say that sarcastically.
No, so I'll tell you why I say it. The Chinese are supposedly communists.
Right.
They're terrible people. And communism is nothing like, Marx would have a heart attack. It would wind up in a mental institution if he saw what happened in China and calls it, what do you call it, communism or socialism.
Right.
Because there are more billionaires today in China than there are in the United States. So how is that communism? But you know what the greatness of China is? They look at what works in other countries,
right.
and they adapt. And we have the arrogance now of saying we have the perfect Constitution. Scalia and Thomas are two guys that said, they believe in originalism.
Right.
And it's you got to be adaptive. And if you're not adaptive and you say you're already perfect, how could you ever improve? It's just like the Torah is supposed to be, it's got everything right. It's the Old Testament, and we're supposed to adhere to what it says. Nevertheless, over the years, our leading scholars and our leading rabbis and our leading intellects made adaptations. So even though it says an eye for an eye, we don't practice that.
Correct.
So if we practice originalism, we have a caller. Oh, she wants a hot date with the rabbi.
Okay.
Anna.
It's probably my wife.
It's anything but your wife.
Yeah, First of all, Morty,
How are you?
Wait,
I'm great, but I just wanted to
Hey
inform.
there.
Hi, how are you?
Good. You just want to what?
No, I just wanted to tell you how spirited this conversation is tonight. I think it's wonderful.
yeah,
And
Yeah, it's great.
thank you. Well, that's two
Well,
votes.
hang on,
That's
hang on.
two votes.
I have
That's
things
two
to say.
positive
I have
votes for
things
this
to say.
program. Thank you.
yeah, go ahead.
So, I've watched American politics and international politics for most of my life. I'm a big political nerd when it comes to these things. And one of the most striking things that I see in the data that's come out of this past election is about independence. I mean, there were a lot of them, and they definitely were breaking for the Democrats in a way that's not, to be expected. Generally, independents are, in any year in which there's any actual lean towards Republicans, they tend to outpace the margin, the final margin. And the split here was definitely for the Democrats. Also, anybody that felt that they were a moderate. So I think, and when you look at what the issues were that they chose, everybody across the board agrees that the economy is tough and that they themselves are in at least half say they're in a worse financial situation than they were 2 years ago. Which, you have to go back to 1982. You basically have to go back to Reagan to see people talking that way. However, they're not blaming the Democrats for it, which is something that goes to what Morty was saying in terms of looking at many of these issues as being global issues. The inflation is like, well, yeah, this is happening, but it's not specific to here or to this administration. The abortion rights were a huge deal, especially for independent women. Like that's where they basically lost all of that economic malaise vote. But the other thing that comes out, and I see this in multiple of the questions and across multiple of the election, the election specific questions. It's a staunch rejection of the whole election denial thing. So this whole business that the election was stolen and blah, 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 that plays great to the GOP base. But to all of those people that are in the middle, it sounds like nonsense. And they don't want that anymore, and they're wanting more stability, not extreme chaos.
I don't know why you jumped to that conclusion, Anna. All the Republicans that I talk to guarantee me that the election was stolen by Biden, and he should go to jail.
And 2/3
Well, no,
of Americans.
I'm saying that the independents reject that. And so that means people who would normally be voting Republican are not because of
Why?
that.
Why?
About the
Wait, I think the rabbi disagrees with you.
Look, 2/3 of Americans think that Joe Biden should not run for re-election. That's a poll that was released
that has
yesterday.
nothing to. That's not. Okay, we're talking about I thought we were talking about the election last night.
No, but what I'm saying
Yes
is,
or no?
if yet we are, but one would think that the midterm elections are a referendum or a message being sent to the present administration. So what I'm
I mean, it's like it can be painted that way, but that's not. People were saying, first of all, I think that most of these are races that were actually local races, which is ultimately the best thing that can happen for our democracy. So, whatever the local issues are for the, Joe Blow running for that congressional seat. But to the extent that the national issues play into it, the independents are staunchly affirming that Biden won fair and square, even if they have a negative opinion of Biden.
Okay.
It's not about whether or not they like Biden.
Right. So that's exactly what I started with. That this vote yesterday was still a referendum on Trump's character and Trump's allegations and fear that the election was stolen and fear that he'll come back and destroy democracy. Despite Biden's, their fear of Trump was greater than their distaste for Biden. That's what I'm saying.
Well, that and the Supreme Court decision. That
Yes.
was the number, difference between inflation and abortion rights was 3%. That's
Correct.
the difference on a national level.
Correct. And most of the women broke for Biden. I think it was 37, a very high percentage of single women voted
And young
for
people,
Biden.
too.
And young for Biden over the abortion issue, which, gets to the issue of how it was leaked, when it was leaked, why it was leaked, and who leaked it.
I don't think the leak had much to do.
Leaking doesn't matter. It was all,
It was all over the
come out
place. Yeah, it was all over the
right
place.
now. It's not
The
about-
leak-
Yeah, well, now.
The leak means it only came out 3 weeks before it would have ordinarily come out. The leak was not Anna, I just want to point out, you say that we're in a terrible economy, and that's been the word of mouth. We're in a terrible economy, everything's terrible, inflation and this. And it's interesting, if you ask individual people how they're doing, overwhelmingly most Americans say they're doing great. They all have jobs, there's full
Okay.
employment, and there's...
Yeah, but here's
And so that played a major
famous
role.
question of Reagan.
What?
Ask yourself if you're doing better today than you were however many years ago. You
Right.
remember that when he ran on that? So this is the first time since '82 that those numbers have been the same. So what my point is that yes, Morty, I agree with you that the things aren't as bad as people think. Fair enough. However, among this electorate, people who actually came out to vote yesterday, they think that the economy's doing pretty bad. They think it's a big deal, but that was not enough to vote against the Democrats.
Right, and it wasn't it
That's
Clinton
not
who
the
said
issue.
it's the economy, stupid? So that's, Anna, that goes back to what we started here 45 minutes ago. Despite the economy, despite the crime, this rise in crime, despite the border issue, the electorate overlooked that. And that's what we're trying to figure out.
Only because none of that is true.
Abortion,
The only thing that's true, the only thing that's...
And the nonsense of tearing everything apart. People are very concerned about political violence. I think the Paul Pelosi thing, I think the GOP did themselves a great disservice by not coming out and vocally condemning that act. That was that looked really, really bad, and people have been very, very concerned about rising political violence. And I think that's a big. I think that the fact that the independents are breaking from the Dems is to basically want to cool that shit down. Sorry for my language, but it's just like enough. Enough of it. And you can say that's just Trump, but I don't think it's just Trump. At this point, the dragon's out of the genius bottle, and it's just lurking around every corner.
Anna, read the article in today's Times. It's an excellent article, even though it was in the New York Times, and a lot of people malign that newspaper.
Okay, tell me which one? Which of the article?
It's a front page article about
Okay.
the rest of the world admiring America's democracy, and now in the terms of the quality of life and elections and so forth, there's 134 countries they surveyed or that are included in the survey, and the United States is below Poland. So we've come way down. That we in the United States. Winning.
We look like Italy or Brazil.
Winning doesn't mean
like a third world country.
Right. Winning doesn't mean
Crazy nonsense.
Winning doesn't mean you got the democracy is supposed to be, as I understand it, winning. You get the most votes, you win. That hasn't happened for the Republicans. Haven't won a majority of the vote since Bush the father. And before that,
That's right.
Before that, Ronald Reagan.
That was the last time they won a majority.
Yeah.
And there's been a whole lot of, and they know that, and that's part of what the anti-immigrant and changing demographic hysteria is all about. But
can I ask you a question?
I'm gonna let you boys get back to it, and I'll
Wait, David Seidemann wants to ask you a question.
Well, it's actually for both of you. Is this all about policy, or is there also a pride factor involved in the presidency? And I'll give you an example. When Ronald Reagan was president, so obviously the Democrats did not agree with him politically, but there was a certain pride that America felt when Ronald Reagan took the podium. When after 9/11, when George Bush Jr. went out to throw out the first pitch at I guess it was Shea Stadium or maybe Citi Field by then. I mean, I remember TV announcers that were staunch Democrats said, "Tonight we're all Americans."
Yeah.
There's a certain pride. I didn't get that sense when Donald Trump was president, and I don't get that feeling when Joe Biden takes the podium.
Yeah, because you don't listen to Trump.
No, I said I don't get that.
No, I'm telling you, you would get it if you listened to Trump. I heard him say on a number of occasions, he's definitely the greatest president ever. And he says, Washington and Lincoln were great, but I think I was still great. I'm still greater than
Right. No, what I'm saying, even though I supported Trump's policies, I didn't feel proud when Trump took the podium. I thought he's an egomaniac, narcissistic.
What do you mean? If it's better than
Right.
If it's better than Washington and Lincoln, you should have a great deal of pride.
Exactly. So is there not a pride factor? I mean, even the Democrats that support Joe Biden's policies and candidacy, don't they realize what the rest of the world realizes about his failing mental acuity, his bumbling? Why doesn't that play a factor? I'll give you an example. Bibi Netanyahu, right, who a lot of Israelis have an issue with, when he walks into a room, he commands a presence.
Right.
Trump commanded a presence, but it was a negative presence. Biden doesn't command any respect. How is that, or why is that not reflected in the polls?
Because, notwithstanding that, he has policies that were good. And the fact that he walks out the wrong entrance, or last week he said that 54 states.
Right, or shakes non-existing people or introduces dead people.
Well, there you go.
If you want a sincere answer to
wait a second, Anna.
I'm going to say that it has.
Anna, I just want to answer this question about dead people. My hero was Daley, the mayor of Chicago, and he always won because he gave the vote to dead people. It's unfair that dead people, just because they die, don't continue to get. Everybody has a constituency. Every other group has somebody to speak up for them. Nobody speaks up
for the
dead. And the only ones you're sure are going to be in your neighborhood, all the rest could move out. So Daley said, those are my people.
That the dead continue to vote for me is definitely
right.
A winning.
I admire that. That's a respect for your elders and your.
So Joe Biden represents the dead.
I just want to say that the full-scale, full-throttle attack on every dimension of our institution that Steve Bannon and the rest of those troglodytes fronted has been followed by a group of really strong, well-coordinated, it's a good team. Now, okay, I will grant to you that the head cheerleader might be a little addled, but the team itself is a great team. And quite frankly, I don't like hero worship, so I don't really care as much about the top of the ticket unless they take all of the oxygen out of the room, which is what Trump.
All right.
The team itself, I want the team to run the thing, and and then let's go forward. And I think that most Americans see that the functioning of government has been, slowly restoring this, because you've got people in there that know how to turn the levers.
Well, we're going to be right back where we started from because we're going to have a 50-50 Senate. We're going to have a president who's out to lunch, and we're going to have the House of Representatives that it looks like is going to be controlled by the Republicans. So we're going to be right back where we started from, where not much is going to happen. Not much is going to happen.
A lot happened. A lot of
afraid you're right about
investigations.
that.
A lot of investigators.
Well,
Thank
that's a
you.
waste of time.
Thank you for your call, Anna. Great call.
Okay.
Thank you, Anna.
And I want to tell you something about the rest of the world's views of the United States. We were the most respected country in the world,
Yeah.
particularly as a model for democracy. And as I said, when the majority vote didn't win and the minority got the presidency, and when we introduced, most countries don't allow the kind of donor domination of the Congress and the Senate as the United States does. And to add insult to injury and make it worse than it's ever been before is they look at the United States and say, "What? It's become an autocracy."
Yeah.
Because Trump wouldn't allow the transfer of the presidency to the what has turned out to be proven that Biden won.
I agree, and that's why I think it's dangerous for him to run again in 2024 because it's just going to dredge up the old arguments. It's going to hurt the Republican Party, not only on the head of the ticket, but down tickets as well on the state and local levels. Great guy, maybe, great policies, terrible for the Republican Party going forward, I think.
The Republican Party is no longer it's the Trump Party.
Okay, well, that's a problem.
No, it's a cult. And these people, DeSantis doesn't matter to the people that love Trump.
That's true.
No,
That's
they
true.
love him. They love him. And it does, whatever he does, if there's investigations, if there's a January 6th, nothing affects them. They think he's fabulous. I read even very brilliant guys. The Hoover Institution,
Right.
They say the wonderful things that Trump did, even though he was less, to be admired in so many of his own life's behavior, but he did fabulous.
Well, let me ask you this. What's more important, the presidency, the Senate, and the House of Representatives or the Supreme Court? Because if you have a president who's not aligned with your political views, you have the Senate, and you have the House of Representatives that's out of whack with your point of views, but you have a conservative Supreme Court. Is that enough to save America? Again, if you're of the opinion that the wrong president and the wrong Senate and the wrong House of Representatives can ruin America.
I happen to believe that the Supreme Court is one of the most adversarial aspects of our government. They don't represent the people. They don't believe in making it a more perfect union. They're rigid about the Constitution and arrogant.
Now it is. Only because there's a 6-3 conservative majority.
No, it's been we are arrogant about and I love our Constitution.
Right.
But, man, in the history of the human race, man has never been perfect. No institution has been perfect. And unless you have the view that you should adapt to changing times, you're going backwards.
So how would you change the Supreme Court?
I would have a retirement at age 65 or something, so they're not there forever. I appreciate that they're very knowledgeable and so forth. And I'd even have a larger Supreme Court, so there's more representation. Right now, the Supreme Court doesn't represent a majority of Americans in any. Not that it should be independent, but it's not independent. It's if you look at the votes now, Thomas votes with the majority. Look,
With the conservative majority.
look. One of the things that they praised Trump the most for was look what he did to the Supreme Court.
Right.
And it's that very thing that he got what he wished for.
That was his greatest accomplishment, according to many.
Now
According to many, that was his greatest accomplishment.
And it's the biggest surprise price they paid the.
In this election.
No, I'm saying they got what they wished for, and it turns out that it was the worst thing that they could ever done.
Because it doesn't reflect where America is.
And also the dishonesty of the members of the Supreme Court. Thomas's wife was agitating for with everybody. We got to turn over the steal the what do you call it? And also the 3 Republicans who got appointed when they were interviewed by Congress. Even Mitch McConnell was pissed off, and he wanted them. No, he wanted them to be. He says, how could they lie when they came? They said, we believe in. They were asked about Roe Wade. They all 3 articulated. We're not going to change precedent.
So let me ask you this.
Did you know that?
Yes, I know. In the 4 minutes I have left with you.
And was that a lie?
I'm not sure. But in the 4 minutes I have left with you.
That's not a lie. If they said we're not going to change precedent.
I hear you. In the 4 minutes I have left with you.
You have my sympathy.
Is America done? Are its best days behind us? Are its best days ahead of us? And what has to change in order to get America united again, back on track? You can't answer that in 4 minutes. Maybe we'll pick that up next time.
No,
but
that's a very good question.
Are the best days behind us? Are the days of Ronald Reagan and that unity, or even John F. Kennedy?
It depends. I happen to think that we're in the most dangerous part of the history of the United States.
I agree.
And that Trump could take over the thing and we'll never have another election.
And I think I agree with you that we are in the most dangerous part of American history, not for the reason you said, but because I think the woke liberals could take over, and then there will be no law and order. So you and I both agree that America is headed for bad times. You think the danger is Trump. I think the danger is liberal wokeism, but I have to run, and I love you.
Okay, but let me just comment on that.
Yes.
The worst thing the local liberals have done is they've given poor people too much money for not working.
That's one thing. They've also corrupted our schools, but that's another issue.
Schools were never great under anybody.
That's true too.
But the other point that you made was, what was it that you said?
I said.
Oh no! I said no liberal or conservative has ever done so much risk to American democracy as Trump has introduced by his behavior, and so that leads to the other side coming back at him. I'm not. Look, liberals are definitely imperfect, and they do. And some at the extreme, the 4 AOC in our group are terrible.
Yeah, they added another one to their. They added another one to their squad last night.
Who's that?
I don't know, but I read an article that they added a 5th member or 6th. Now they're a basketball team. Okay, guys, this was lovely.
Thank
Morty,
you. You're always great.
If you ever decide to invite me back again.
Never.
Never.
No, you're great. Even when you disagree with me.
That's the best part.
You're a great diplomat, So, I'm sorry to disagree with you so often.
I think it's phenomenal. That's how the human mind grows. That's the secret of the Talmud. The secret of the Talmud is that the rabbis disagree.
Even if you and I disagreed, we wouldn't get to the stage where Congress and the president are.
No. Never. I love you too much.
No, I would vote for you.
You would vote for what?
Whatever you want to, because
okay.
I respect your wisdom.
I want to become.
I don't take the view that I'm always right. I'm wrong a lot of times.
I once asked my father if he was the president of our household, because I wanted something, and he said yes, and my mother said no. I said, Dad, aren't you the president of our household? He said yes, but your mother is the Speaker of the House.
That's it.
All right, Lila Tov. Good night, Morty. I love you.
I told you what I did. Why we had such a good marriage. 70 years my marriage was.
Yeah, Kenahara.
And because I said before we got married, I think I told you this. Yeah. We made a deal. Rosalie, my wife, takes care of the big issues, the major issues, where we send our kids to school, how we spend our money, the really issues that matter. She says you could take care of the bigger issues, if we should go to war against Afghanistan or Iraq. So we never got into a conflict. You know, she said, okay, you want to go to war against Afghanistan, that's your field. I'm not going to argue with you.
And Morty, I have to thank you again, because last night when we spoke, you told me that the topic of tonight's discussion was war. And then I get here and I find out that tonight, that, you know, whether we should go to war, what's the Torah's outlook on
You
war.
don't think
And then I get here tonight.
you don't think we had a war today?
No, and then tonight I get here and I see that the conversation's about yesterday's election. So all my notes were about the Torah's outlook on war, when you can go to war.
All right, we'll do that. We'll do that next
But thank
time.
you once again for the advance warning and making me seem foolish.
I didn't, as it is, without any knowledge, you exceed me in so many ways. So
Not even close.
why would I inform you?
Right, I think the least
I
advance
keep you in
notice, the better.
Right, I keep you in the dark to the last
I
one.
live in the dark.
You're great. Anyway, everybody should congratulate this young man because he had his first grandchild
Yes.
within the last month, and he married off 3 daughters
In 27 weeks.
within a year, and all 3 of them are going to make him a grandfather over and over again. So one was delivered and 2 are in the oven, you know. Congratulations.
Okay. Morty, I love you.
I
It's
show you,
120.
shows you how productive this guy is.
Yeah, when do I have time? Anyways, I look forward to meeting with you again soon.
Thank you.